Good evening. We are back once again for Archangel Link Live number 45. Jordan, how are you?
I am great, Rob. This is probably, the most consistent thing I've ever done in my life. We've gone 45 weeks in a row. Amazing.
I know, this is great. It's good to be back, and good to see you here tonight, and good to see all the folks out in the audience who may be joining us either live or on the replay. Happy to have you here as well. And tonight we're going to cover something that I think is pretty cool. You and I were talking about this, Jordan, kind of brainstorming different topics, and something that comes up that authors don't always know about are some of the other elements. Obviously, there's the book itself, the text, the manuscript that you're working on, but then there's also what's called front and back matter. So I thought it'd be good to kind of go over front and back matter basics, and we can kind of just start off here and run through a couple of these points. I'll just cover through them and then we can touch on them. What is front and back matter? It helps to demonstrate professionalism. It provides direction for readers. And this video specifically will focus on front and back matter for self-publishing authors because not everything will apply to every author out there. So any thoughts on those as we kind of jump into it and get started, Jordan?
No, not right off the bat.
Okay, good deal. So my first thing here, what is front and back matter? It is anything, as far as I'm concerned, that is not the manuscript, the main block of the material that you're producing, your book. So that includes things like the title page, the copyright page, the appendix, the index, any calls to action, any sort of bonuses or incentives that you have to offer, any requests for reviews, all those different things that can be important and useful elements in your book as a self-publishing author and can help you stand out a little bit, help you to distinguish yourself, help you to kind of touch on those different bases and provide some direction for readers. That's what the front and back matter is. And again, this is not going to be applicable. All of these different things that we're going to cover may or may not be applicable to all authors, but a number of them are. So we've kind of organized them as absolute must-haves, like you're really in trouble if you don't have these, and then things that are really great to have, and then some optional ones. And just depending, again, on your manuscript, it may shift and vary a little bit. But yeah, anything else on any of that?
No, the only thing I would add there, Rob, is I think, it may not apply to you, but I think depending on where you're at, I think it's always good to go through and question, even if you happen to be going, you're not doing it yourself, whatever, even if you're going with maybe a mainstream publisher, it's always okay to ask, hey, can I add a page like this? Should I put this in there? And with this video, that's what we're going to be talking about, some of the pages that you might want to put in your book. So it's no matter where you're coming from, I think it's good to look through this and then question some of these. Okay, well, I didn't even think about that. Right. There were some that came up in my research, and I haven't put that in there, and maybe that's something I could consider to put in the next one. So definitely good to question this.
Yeah, and I think the other advantage too is it gets you thinking a little bit about that marketing element. And just wanted to give a shout out in the audience. We've got looks like this lady the lady writes. So great to have you here. If you have any questions along with any of our live streams, please feel free to leave them in the comments, and we'll do our best to address them toward the end of the video and see if we can help provide any additional insight of something that you're curious about that we don't cover. But yeah, as the lady writes mentions, it's an essential part of marketing. It's something that allows you to start thinking about how you can provide additional value. What's the value add? What's the proposition in your book? And how can you direct them onto those next steps? Let's say you wowed them with the content. So what else are you going to create that's going to allow them to connect further with you? So I think this is in part what the front and back matter is about. It's making that connection a little bit stronger and also providing additional value in the context of what you've created already.
Yep, and marketing is always a from the ground up thing. We always ask those questions. Okay, where are you at? Where is the base? And this is the base of marketing in your book. It starts with your book. Yep. It sounds like obvious and it sounds simple, but some of this stuff in there, you're just laying that foundation for your marketing work.
Yep, absolutely. No, I agree. Cool. So Jordan, let's jump into the absolute must-have pages, and I've annotated 3 here.
Okay.
And we've got the title page, the copyright or ISBN page, and the table of contents. So thoughts on those as we kind of get jumping off.
Yep, like we said, must-haves. I mean, the title page is pretty obvious. You're just going to want to have your title and subtitle, author name, potentially if you're going to put who you're. Maybe you had some publishing services done, or it was just completely done by a publisher. You can put that in there as well.
Right.
As far as the copyright page, that can sometimes, and you might want to, you can specify that a little bit more, Rob. Sometimes that can be a whole separate page. And I think it does depend on your subject matter and genre, how, if you want to do a whole separate page. I think all Amazon requires is that you put a copyright year in there, or Amazon, and I think books in general require that you put a year in there. Yeah, is that, I don't think you have to have it as a separate page necessarily.
Yeah, not in generally. Typically, I see that included with the ISBN page. So you'll have the information about when it was published, who owns the copyright to it, who it's assigned to, as well as the ISBN. But it is something that you do want to include, and I will include actually a link later on in the description here to a little cheat sheet, I guess, that we created about copyright. How does copyright apply? How do you apply for copyright, et cetera? The short of it is in the United States, there is an implied copyright anytime you commit something to a storable medium. So either that's writing on a sheet of paper or, completing something and saving the document on your desktop, whatever it is stored. That's different from registering the copyright. And if there's interest, we can kind of touch on some of that in a future video. But yeah, generally you do just want to have just something that says, copyright Jordan Rain, copyright Rob Archangel, 2020. And if there is an imprint assigned to it, if it is Archangel Inc. Publishing, if it is, jordansbooks.com or, whatever it is, you can kind of include that there. But it is something you want to make sure to include, just so you're covering that base and people know, okay, this book, this material, this intellectual property belongs to this party.
Good deal. So lastly, in the must-haves, you have to have a table of contents too. Now, if you're in a Kindle book, you're going to want to make sure that table of contents is clickable. And then if you're having it there for a print book, you can have the page numbers listed out and where to find things in that. Again, pretty obvious, but when you're putting your book together, you want to make sure that's in there. And then formatting wise, we have some resources we can recommend as far as how to format that for both of those. I'm not a formatter myself. I'm not an expert in that, but you do have to make sure that it is, you have to do some special formatting to make sure it's clickable, and then it goes to the actual page within Kindle and all that.
Yep, absolutely. And one of those resources that I will include a link to as well is the Archangel Inc. skeleton file. So it's a downloadable file that you can download to in MS Word format. And it provides kind of a template, a structure, so that you can start writing your book in that format. It has the table of contents already there. It has links back to the main table of contents from the individual chapters, and includes a number of the other elements of these front and back matter components that we're going to be discussing. So that's archangelinc.com/skeleton. But again, I will include a link in the description below as well.
Good deal.
All right,
Rob, you're going to go and jump up with the the great to have pages. So not absolutes, not a title page. These are pages you might definitely want to consider adding. Right.
So just a couple listed here. We've got the thank you page / call to action back matter. And it looks like I've duplicated that. And then the about the author page is the other, and I will include that over on our screen here in a moment. So the short of it, the thank you page usually is some sort of, hey, thanks so much for reading. If you had a positive experience, here's the next step, whatever that is. Oftentimes it's going to be some sort of call to review, or it might be an incentive to go back to your website, join your mailing list, sign up for a new course that you have coming up, something like that. Just something to connect with them. And again, we mentioned providing direction to your readers, giving them a way to build on that relationship. They've already spent 20 minutes, an hour, several hours, maybe days of their time on your content. They loved it, hopefully, and they want to know more and be in touch with you more. Make it easy for them. Give them an easy opportunity to do that.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add with that, it's definitely great to have. It's closer, as far as marketing goes, this is closer to my list of absolute must-have, because I think it's so important if you're thinking, as a reader, hey, I made my way all the way through this book. Where do I go from here? Right. Where's the next step for me? And maybe that's just to feel good and be done reading that book. But as the author, I don't want that to be the end point. I want that reader to, especially if they got to the end, I want them to say, okay, I want more. I want more from this guy. Like, I want to go to his website. I want to sign up. I want to buy all these things. I want to buy everything he has. That's my ultimate hope, by the end.
Yep.
And thinking of it that way, I always think, especially for the people that are making it all the way through your book, because at least, you're at least somewhat engaging them if they make it through, a couple hundred pages.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And then the next topic here, or the next element here, is the About the Author page. So this is an opportunity to talk a little bit about you. You can kind of fold it into that, what you're describing, Jordan, in terms of sending them back to your website, sending them back to something else that you have going on. But it also gives them a little bit of an opportunity to get to know you. You can, kind of describe yourself on your own terms, whether really seriously or, in sort of clever and humorous way, or, whatever it is that kind of speaks to you and speaks to your character and allows you to wax poetic about yourself, really, for just a moment here. So it's a good opportunity to kind of puff up your chest a little bit, let people know about all the other cool things that you have going on, and again, direct them to something that you'd love for them to learn more about. Again, maybe your website, maybe your email list, maybe your social media accounts, whatever that might be, so that they can continue to get to know you and follow you.
Yep.
All right, good deal. So we've got a number of optional pages coming up, and I'll kind of just run through them all and then comment a little bit, and Jordan, interrupt me along the way as we do that.
Good deal.
All right, so optional pages. That can include things like, let's see, accolades, the dedication, the index, the foreword or preface or introduction or prologue to your book. I kind of put those all in these weird squigglies because some people consider them to be part of the manuscript. Just kind of depends on your perspective. Endnotes, the glossary, any appendix or appendices that you might have, the call to review, if that is separate from that call to action that we mentioned before. Another thing, sometimes authors will have some sort of front call to action or some sort of front lead magnet. So we'll kind of discuss that in a moment here. Also, potentially might want to include previous works or related resources from the author. So if you have other things that are kind of related, hey, check out the other books in this series. That might be something that you might want to include to let people know about. You might want to include a preview of a subsequent book coming up, and one that I didn't copy earlier, but look this up, and we don't see this too often, but you will see it periodically, something called a frontispiece. And a frontispiece usually will go on the opposite of the title page. So often it's going to be some sort of image. So for example, if it's, let's say, a fantasy novel, you have maybe a map of the imaginary land that you're building is, or that your story is set. Or it might be, if it's some sort of biography, it might have an image, of the subject of your story. So frontispiece is another one. But yeah, so those are a handful here. We can kind of start making our way. But any thoughts initially on any of those, Jordan, that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, initially, and you can tell me what you think about this, Rob. But
Sure.
as I'm just going through and thinking about these optional pages, I think the only thing here that you can really do wrong is to put all of them in your book. Because if you're thinking about, I thought about that when you put in, the preface, introduction, prologue. I remember when I wrote my first book, I put several of those in, and my editor was like, you wrote a preface and an introduction and like all this stuff, like you don't need that. You just need this one thing. So be tactical in that, be strategic.
Sure.
You don't need to put these pages in. That's why they're in the optional, just because, other books have them in there. If they think about it in terms of serving the reader, if they help the reader to understand your book, that call to action marketing piece, or if it's helpful to have some kind of preface or foreword in there. I really like forewords in my book because that gives me an opportunity. And Rob, you did the foreword for my the book, The Balance Point.
Right.
And I really like that as far as a piece in a book, because it's that marketing, it's that connection. Hey, I'd love for you to write this in my book for me. And then that's just like, everyone that reads my book sees your name at the end of that. Publishing services. Oh, that's cool. Maybe I'll check that out. And that's just a good thing to potentially build those relationships. So, I mean, I think of a lot of these pages from a marketing perspective. But yeah, the only thing you can do wrong is to put them all in. I'll say that.
Yeah, good call. Yeah, I think you're right. Some of the forewords, they can be have a cross-pollination effect, and they're nice. They're helpful framing devices. But as you mentioned, Jordan, you don't necessarily want to include all of them, but some of them can be helpful. So, for example, accolades. Let's say I mentioned before, one of our clients, Jay Campbell. He's a layperson, not a medical practitioner, but he has a couple of books on hormonal optimization and sort of physical fitness and that kind of thing. And so he has in several of his books accolades from from practicing clinicians, people who say, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about. That can be really helpful. If you have a dedication, that's often very common. I dedicate this to my family, to my mentor, to whomever's important to you, because it's a way of kind of getting a sense of what the person's values are, and where they're at, where their head's at, where their heart's at, and that can be nice to connect with them on some level. Index is something that we don't do all that often, and I would say it's becoming less common in some respects, especially on digital editions, because you can literally just do a word search. If you're looking for every example of the word bench press in your book, you don't have to look it up in the index anymore. You can actually just type it into your Kindle, and it'll give you all the instances where it shows up in that particular title. But it still can be very nice, and this is, I would say, more common for more professional, more reference type books, medical books, sometimes photography books, technical books, that kind of thing. But it is something that we've done for a number of our clients, but it's not all that common, and it's something that you can elect to decide on.
I had another thought I wanted to mention. Important to talk about the call to review page, because I generally put that as a separate page in my book, especially for Kindle, because I want anyone reading on Amazon on a Kindle to be able to to have some kind of prompt to leave a review. I don't know that necessarily. I think it's definitely in the optional, because I think most people that read books just don't end up leaving a review, and I don't know how much putting that page in there is really going to prompt someone to take that action. And also, with that note, we're thinking about, especially if you already have a call to action in the end, do I want to give them multiple calls to action? What's more important to you as the author? Is their review on Amazon more important, or is the reader going to your website, downloading your lead magnet, coming upon your list, getting to know more about you in that way, or is that more important? I think generally, probably for most of us and most authors, that's going to be the more important thing there. So just be thinking about that too, marketing wise. You don't want to just flood your book with these pages, but neither do you want to flood it with different call to actions. And then by the end, the reader's like, well, I don't want to do any of these things. I'm not going to do these things. I'm going to move on. And
yeah, I think it's a really great point. Just be mindful. Attention spans don't go on infinitely, and you really want to make the most out of your opportunity to connect with the reader after the body of the text is complete. And you might want to be judicious about it. If you give them one thing after another, like you said earlier, Jordan, if you have an introduction and a preface and a foreword and a prologue, and all of that, it can get a little bit draining. And so just be decisive about it. Make sure that what you're doing, you're going for high impact and high value. If you are going to do multiple things, it can work. It just depends on the context. So be aware of that, and try not to squander the goodwill and the attention span of your reader if they've gotten to that so far.
Yep, absolutely.
Cool, good deal. Let's see, just to mention there's a couple of others. We went over Endnotes, Glossary. Probably most of us know what those are. Appendix, if you have something that needs addition afterward, especially if you have subsequent edition, appendix to the first edition and so forth, or appendix for the second edition, those can be really helpful. We mentioned the front CTA and lead magnet. Again, think about services. Think about cross-pollination opportunities that you might have. So, for example, you might start off with a book. Hey, I hope you love this book. If you'd like a downloadable worksheet that goes along with it, you can sign up right away before you get started, so you can print it out and have it on hand, as you're going through your book. Something like that. Again, a way to build engagement, to provide value, and to get you as an author thinking laterally about what you can offer to enhance the experience for your reader.
Yep, and just a note on the previous works, even if you don't necessarily have other books out there, you can list other blog posts or if you've written articles on Medium or LinkedIn or anything like that, you can list places that other people can find you. It doesn't necessarily have to be other books, or it could be, if you have online courses, it could be anything there. But just thinking about that, hey, again, if the reader wants to pursue more information about you, there's a list for them right there, and hopefully it relates to the content of the book.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So let's see. I think that's about it. And then previews of next books. Sometimes we see that actually in our Audible guide to mastering your audiobook. We do include an excerpt from a follow-up book that we had back in the day. It's a few years old.
Okay.
But anyway, something like that can be helpful, gets people a little bit more interested and add some additional value. But yeah, let's kind of wrap up here.
The only note with that, Rob, that's probably important to mention, that if you do have your book on Kindle Unlimited, you need to make sure not to put more than 10% of that in there. So if you were putting, say you're putting your second book in there, but that second book happens to be in Kindle Unlimited, you just need to make sure it is just a short preview. Now, if it's not in Kindle Unlimited, you can put as much of it in there as you want. Now, you probably only really need 10 to 20% anyway, but just be thinking about that if you do put that in. Great
caveat. Yeah, absolutely. Be mindful of the agreements that you enter into, and make sure that you're not acting in bad faith with respect to any of those. So, all right. So moving on to concluding thoughts, trying to keep it tight here. We've got just a couple of things here. So not all of the elements will apply, as we went over, but the front and back matter can be harnessed to give you an edge. It's going to be a way to orient the reader experience, to add value to the reader experience, and to direct them to additional resources so that they can deepen that connection a little bit more as they go on. And if you design and utilize front and back matter toward that end, it can be very effective. And then last question here, what did we miss? How do you manage your front and back matter? Are there things that you really like to include, or things that you definitely don't like to include? Anything that we didn't cover, anything that we did cover, but you're curious about and would like to learn more? We're happy to know and receive some feedback toward that end. Any other thoughts, Jordan?
No, I'm good. I think we covered it here.
Cool. Good deal. All right. And let's cover the comments here. So again, the lady writes, thanks for checking in here. As you mentioned, this is an essential part of marketing. Thanks for chatting about it. And I typically do a Dear Reader letter versus an About the Author, depending on the book or pen name. It's a goal to connect beyond something that feels too generic. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. You know, Dear Reader, again, part of that, framing the experience, creating the sort of user experience that you're hoping for, and being mindful to make it, as you mentioned here, organic, make it deliberate and intentional, and just kind of connect with them in a way that is authentic to you and your brand and what you're hoping for and what you're hoping to accomplish as time goes on. So great comments. Thanks for adding them.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. It makes me think of I had a page in my book that I left as call to review as the title. And then Christy, our proofreader, was like, Jordan, are you sure you want to leave this as the title of that chapter? And I was like, you know what? No, I just wasn't thinking. I don't want it. She's like, typically people change that, Yeah, so right. I think that's a fantastic point that the lady writes is making, is that you can customize and personalize the experience. You don't have to put thank you page as the chapter. I mean, I think definitely curtail it and, use your book's content as the driver in figuring out what those are. I really like that idea, because I think it's much more, people thank you for reading, and it does feel generic. Whereas Dear Reader, you can say different things in there, or however you want to do it.
Yeah, as I'm working on a project with Dale Roberts here, and it's his upcoming book on keywords, and one of the key things that he mentions. And hopefully I'm not stealing his thunder at all, but he highlights, early on, hey, there are people behind the figures. When you're thinking about keyword researching and marketing and that kind of thing, it's a numbers game to some extent, but the numbers are really representative of actual people, real people on the other end of it. And these are shared interests, these are shared topics, things that you really care about. And similarly, there are people at the other end of it. So you're not just trying to check boxes for the sake of checking boxes and saying that, oh, hey, I got 4 out of the 6 front matter elements, so I'm good now. It's actually what makes sense in this context for my title, and what am I going to say that's actually going to create the connection that I'm looking for. So yeah, really good point here. And let's see, Lily writes also, it's a good spot to leave conversation that leads to the exterior locations. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, great point here. Anything else that you wanted to share, Jordan, as we wrap things up?
No, I'm good. This was good.
Right. Excellent. Yeah. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for checking out this stream. The lady writes, thanks for sharing some thoughts and being available on the live stream. And if you are interested in anything else that we talked about here, want us to expand on it, or, go over anything or cover things that we possibly missed, we're always receptive to feedback. So leave thoughts, questions, comments down below, and we will see you folks next time. Have a good evening.